Perfect. Oh, I already got a question here, which is fantastic. Rose, I'm making a note for your question. I will have a section to catch up on things, so I'll make sure that I'll follow up on that question as well. Okay, so if it's okay with everyone, we are going to start. We have around an hour and a half. Today we're looking at Google Forms, but I also want to just kind of go back to some of the questions you had from last time and also some of the things we have covered, just to clarify a few things and add a few extra details. So let's jump in.
Your microphone is muted.
Unmute.
Monica, you're muted.
Yes, I just unmuted myself again. Okay, you hopefully can hear me now as well. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So Google Forms and Sheets is the topic for today. So just a reminder, we will have one more session after that on Google Slides and other cool apps like a Jamboard, for example. And before we jump in, I know many of you are familiar with Zoom, but just a very, very quick reminder, try to make sure you're muted. If you're joining in and want to talk, do something else, there are interruptions in the house, just make sure that your microphone is on mute mode. If there's issues with your internet connection, the sound gets a bit blocky or choppy, you can turn off your video. That way it will be a bit better for you. Also use the chat to post the questions for us. We will try to monitor them. And even last time I promised that after the session, if I miss anything, we are going to take those questions in the next session. So that's why I have a few items to follow up on as well, just to make sure that we don't miss those. Use reactions if you would like to let us know or to give us visual feedback. And a reminder, this session is being recorded so that you can review the slides and the information we share afterwards. This is really shared with you mostly as a link or posted on MTML's website to make sure that those who participate have a chance to go back and review the content as well. One more tip in terms of Zoom, if things disappear on you, you're looking for the tools, they get lost, they basically are just kind of hidden for a second. Move your mouse over the screen and the tools will show up again. If you navigate to a different window, your window for Zoom may get smaller. It may look like a small square. And if you need to go back to your Zoom, there is a tiny box with a green arrow pointing up. You can use that icon to click on it and go back to your Zoom and be able to see the full Zoom window again. And finally, if those don't work or you're totally lost, try to look for your Zoom icon in your toolbar at the bottom. That's where the Zoom icon may be. And then if you click on that, it should bring you back. So hopefully those tools would make it a bit easier for you to navigate Zoom. Okay, now extra tips. If you are trying to access the screen or do something and you can't, sometimes Zoom opens in a full screen, especially when we share slides with you. So use the tools either in the top right corner that look like arrows or an option to exit full screen, and that will allow you to go back and see a few more things or open extra new windows if you need to do that during the session. Quick reminder about myself. My name is Monika. JP is a bit easier for a last name. I'm the organizational development consultant at Alpha Plus. We focus on education and technology, and I'm just including this slide in case you want to contact me with any questions or as a follow-up afterwards. Now, we talked about Google Drive and Google Docs last week, or 2 weeks ago, actually. But really, I just wanted to follow up because there were a few questions in the chat that as we were going through them, I may have missed them or wasn't very clear in my answer. So I just wanted to very briefly go and touch on them just to answer some of those questions. So one of them was security and privacy about Google Drive and Google products overall. So just to add to some of the comments that were added in the chat at the time, I just want to point out that it's an online cloud service. So whether you're using Google Drive, OneDrive from Microsoft, Dropbox, all those are cloud services. So there's always a slight risk, like with anything you're accessing online, but overall, they're all considered safe to access and share information. The biggest risk for you overall is your password. So if you have a very, very weak password, or if you're sharing information with too many people in terms of passwords, that's usually where the issues come up with, is somebody guessing or accessing your password and getting in that way. So just keep that in mind. Passwords are very, very important. Make them complicated. Do not repeat the passwords between different applications. Try to make them different from each other, and as complicated as possible so that others can't guess those as well. All right. Now, there is a question from Gabi. So Gabi, if you would like, you can either put the question in the chat or you can unmute yourself if that's easier.
Yes, Monica, it's
Yes.
sort of a very important question for me.
Yeah.
Because I use my board's Google Drive now, and I also use my my Gmail, my personal Gmail.
Okay.
I have been of course, different passwords. I try to keep my board's work Google Drive separate from my personal one.
Okay.
And every time, once in a while, it asks me to sync, and I am so afraid to click sync. I don't do it, but I'm asking, can one accidentally marry their two accounts inadvertently without even doing it on purpose? I'm just asking because
that's a very good question. And just to clarify, what I suspect happens is when it's asking you about syncing, is basically to either sync it with the phone or sync it with your browser in a way. It doesn't mean it's trying to marry two accounts. There are still two separate accounts that are used for different purposes. Usually the syncing means that your browser, for example, will know or keep your history of what you're doing in a specific browser, so that when you come back to that browser, it will remember where you were at. It will remember what bookmarks you have used. That's very likely what the system means when it's asking you to sync. It doesn't mean we want to connect those two accounts in any way. There are always two separate accounts. So I hope that helps, Gabi. If that is not clear, stay afterwards. I'll try to answer those questions or clarify a bit more. I'm going to jump back to our questions. There was also something about sharing permissions. And one of the discussions we had is that whenever you use Google products, specifically Google Drive, you can share your files and folders with others. And you sort of own the decision who you're going to share with and then how you're going to share it. So sometimes some of you ask, if I share it with my student, can they see other things? No, they usually see either a folder or files you specifically shared with them. Sometimes you ask me, if I send a link to someone, can they edit the document? It will depend on the permissions you set. So when you're sending somebody a link to a document or a folder, right next to that link setting, there's an option where it asks you, do you want to give somebody viewing rights, comment rights, or editing rights? That's where you're controlling some of those permissions. So you could send a link to your student, they can only view, but if you actually meant for them to edit the document, you may need to go back and change your permissions so the student can edit the document. If you don't do that and you send them the link, then they will be asked for access when they want to edit it. So that question of, my student is being asked to access it, but I shared the link, that's very likely because your editing permission wasn't enabled. That's why the system is asking the student to log in or ask for access. Now, another question was Google Drive versus OneDrive. Think of it as two separate types of accounts. One is from Google, one is from Microsoft. They both work on storing your files and folders. One is just working within Google environment and one is working within Microsoft environment. So similar, but different providers. Is Google Doc a word processor like Microsoft Word for formatting? In a way, yes. So if you're working in Word, you open a Word program and then you're editing in that way. When you're working in Google Doc, you are within Google Docs environment. If you can call it processor, yes, in a way, because it will have all kinds of tools for you to be able to create the document, report the document, customize it, the same way you would be doing it in Word. Again, different providers. That's the main difference. And Google Docs are cloud-based, so you're working online, where Microsoft products could be online through the cloud services like Office 365, or downloaded version and pre-installed on your computer, where you're working with a program that's set up on your computer. Can we create folders in Google Doc? That's a really good question. No, because Google Doc is your processing system. It's the one that actually is creating the document for you, but you are not creating folders in there. There's going to be a tiny icon to tell you where to save it or if you want to move it. But what you're doing is you're actually doing that in Google Drive. So they're so connected that sometimes it's hard to see that your Google Doc is actually behind the scenes sitting in your Google Drive, and that's where you're managing your files and folders. So just to clarify, there will be no icon anywhere in your Google Doc that will say manage folders. There will be an icon that says move, and then you can move your file to different folders, but that's the only way you will see some of the file folder application there. Okay, can Google Doc read back to you what was written? Yes and no. Itself, it doesn't have that function built in. If you recall, we did a bit of the Google the voice typing where we were able to type the document. It doesn't have the reading capability, but in the Chrome browser, you can add extensions. And some of those extensions will have the option to read or to read out loud or read out the text that you have typed up. So you can do that through extensions that you can add to your Chrome browser. And finally, the desktop version. Yes, there's a desktop version of Google Drive. You can download it to your computer, and basically what it is, it will just show up as a folder in your computer where you can drag and drop files into, and those will sync with everything else that's happening in your drive or on your computer, okay? Now, I'm going to quickly go back to Rose's question. Rose Joseph asked, is there a way to share a Google Doc without people being able to see the email addresses of the other people who have access? So it all depends. If you give somebody editing rights and then they go in and they click share, they may see who else has access to it. If you share the document by link and then a link only, then very likely they will not see what other people have access to this document. So it just depends where you're looking at as to who has access to the document. So depending which way you look at it. Are you coming from Google Drive looking at it? Are you coming from the share button to look at it? And so on. But if you gave 3 people email access to the document and then they send somebody a link, the person who is looking at the document may see who else has access to it. So not sure if it helps, but it's one of those things that it may show who else has access, and very often by the email. Okay. The link sometimes doesn't show it, so I would just keep that in mind. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I hope that it helps. I know I took a bit of time, but I just want to make sure that you, as you're practicing your Google Drive, your Google Docs, if there are any questions, you're comfortable with those, and then you can use that. So one of the things I also wanted to touch on very quickly is saving a Google Doc as a Word document or PDF. We very briefly did it last time, but I just want to repeat that so everybody else is a bit more comfortable with that idea, because you can. So Google Doc, when it's created, when you're working in it, it's working within the Google Doc environment. But what if you want to send it to somebody that may not have a Google Doc, or if you want to save it as a PDF? So if it's a resume, you can send it to somebody else. So I'm going to stop presenting just for a second and then show you that if I go to Google Drive, so drive.google.com, and I open a new Google Doc, so just very, very quickly, I'll click new, scroll down, and I will be able to get my Google Docs right here. I can click on it to open it. It's going to be an empty document. So I'm just going to type one word so that I have something in my document. I have an option to click on File, and in File, I have an option to download this document as a very specific format. So in here, I have an option to download it as a Microsoft Word document. So it's not going to save automatically into my Google Drive. I actually have to download it to my computer in that format. And then I can re-upload it back to Google Drive, or just keep it on the computer and attach it to my email if I'm sending this out. Think of it that way. You're working within different systems. And as you are doing that, the system has different requirements. So in this case, if you were working directly just in Google Doc, you can share the link, people can access it. But if you are trying to work now in a Word document, the system says, we suggest that you download it as Word document so you can open it in a desktop version of Word, for example, or save it or email it if you want to. So you have those options in here. So I just wanted to make sure that you know how to do that. So I'm going to download it as a Word document, and it's just going to take a few seconds to load. So I'm going to say Monika test. It's going to save and bring it to my computer. So now it's only saved in my computer. But if I want to now open this Word document again in my Google Drive, what I can do is go to my Drive, click New, and I can upload back the Word document. So I'm going to File, Upload, go to my downloads. My document is here. You can recognize the extension DOCX for docs. If I click on it and I bring it up, it's going to come back here, get uploaded, and then I can open it again in Google Docs. So if you have existing Word documents, you can easily just open them and access them in Google Drive by uploading them to your Google Drive folder. And because this was a Google Doc originally, it looks the same. If you have Word documents that you have created 10 years ago and they have specific formatting, occasionally when you bring it to Google Docs and you open it with Google Docs, it may just look slightly different. So the formatting may change a bit. But I just want to make sure that you know that you can go both ways. You can download them as Word or PDF, and you can upload them back and open them. The one tricky thing about all this is the actual PDFs. Just because PDFs can be stored in Google Drive, we are having a lot of questions or hearing a lot of questions from you about using those documents. So I'm just very briefly and quickly going to look for a PDF document, any document that I can find. Let me see. I have a document from MTML. If I click on a PDF document, it's going to open in this view. So if I'm just reading the document, I can go through it and review it. But some of you are asking, I have a fillable PDF. So the fillable PDF doesn't work the same way in Google Drive because the option to be able to fill it out is usually managed by Adobe Acrobat. It's a separate program. And so when you download a PDF that's fillable to your computer will open it in Adobe Acrobat and allow you to fill it out. But here it's sitting in the cloud, it's sitting in Google Drive. So Google Drive only gives you this preview of it that you can access and read. It doesn't have the functionality to be able to edit it. So if you have fillable PDFs, you will have to download them, and you have to make sure your students, your learners who are accessing those files have Adobe Acrobat so that they can actually fill it out and know how to send it back to you as well, whether it's saving it into the drive for you or attaching it back to the email so that you can see what they did. That process has to happen as well. So keep that in mind because this really comes up a lot in our conversations with programs. The PDFs are slightly different than other files that you're working with as well. So I'm going to jump back to our session because really we are here to talk about all of our Google Forms and things we can do. So I hope this gave you a bit of overview and tips and ideas of what can happen. And then if you had any questions, that answered some of your questions. But now let's talk about Google Forms and Google Sheets. So this is a kind of messed up graphic, lots of things on the same page. But really what I want you to understand is that Microsoft package has all kinds of applications, including something called Microsoft Forms and Microsoft Excel for spreadsheets. On the Google end, again, we have a multitude of different applications with Google Forms and Google Sheets, which kind of are same purpose. So Microsoft Forms and Google Forms is to create forms, surveys, quizzes, and Excel and Sheets is to work with spreadsheets, okay? So now that we sort of can imagine that this is how it works, let's talk about Google Forms. Many of you have heard about them. Many of you already filled out Google Forms, but it's really like a survey monkey or any kind of tool that allows you to create surveys or quizzes. And in the features you get, you can create assessments as well. You can create all kinds of tests, even self-marking tests. So the quiz and self-marking test is the one where the system can be allocated specific points. And if the student answers correctly, the system will say that that answer is correct. If they don't answer correctly, the system will say the answer is wrong, or any other feedback you want to give to the student, but it will self-assess as well. You can have various types of questions from multiple choice to check marks to grids and so on. And you can also include images and videos. And so with the dev community, when we work with Google Forms, you could actually include videos when you're signing a question or giving instructions and have the question below. So that's how you can do videos within the dev community. For anybody else, any videos, you can embed them into the form and then ask questions about the videos below. You can also add images and use the questions below to ask about the image above. So there is a bit of flexibility. A lot of times you're just used to seeing questions only, but there is that option to make it a bit more different and more interactive. You can add an option to upload files. Many people don't use that because if you want to ask to upload a file to a form, somebody has to have a Google account to be able to do that. And those questions will come up often when you're asking somebody to submit a resume or a document that they may have completed. So again, if you're okay with you and your students being signed in, you can ask them to upload files. But if that becomes a barrier for them, then do not use the option to upload files. Now, there are also options to break down your survey or your test into sections, so it's a bit smaller. You can share it by email, by link. You can even embed it into a website so that somebody navigating through activity can look at the activity and very quickly below fill out the survey or quiz or test that goes with this activity on the website. So let's take a closer look at some examples, because a lot of you ask me, what kind of forms? What could I use it for? So in the slides, you do have a link for examples that I'm sharing with you today. So the very first one is feedback. Many of us will be asking for feedback at the end of the program. There may be some feedback a few months afterwards, like a follow-up surveys that you're trying to do. It could also be a feedback about the program during the sessions you're running. So all those kinds of feedbacks can be set up directly in a Google form. And as I mentioned, even on my graphic, you will see there could be a video that you can embed and ask for feedback about the video. What did you like about the video? What can we improve on? And so on. So it doesn't have to be just a question in text. It could be pictures or videos as well. Registrations is another one. So a lot of organizations organize special events. So you could register for events that way. I actually believe MTML has handled registrations for those sessions through Google Forms. So you may have seen that in action. But also organizations like school boards may be doing student registrations directly through Google Forms. So that's another example for you where you can click on this link after our session and actually review how those forms are set up if you want to see directly the questions. Quizzes is another one. So it's a Google form where you can have all kinds of questions and the system can mark the right and wrong answers. What's nice about that is that, as I said, the system can mark the results. So it will tell you, you got so many questions right and so many questions wrong. As somebody who develops the quiz and form, you can go and provide additional feedback. So if somebody gets the right answer, great job. You can give a feedback like that. If somebody provides a wrong answer, you can be a bit more supportive and say, you didn't get this right this time, but here's a link to an activity to do to practice, or here's a link to a video so that you can review it one more time. So you can provide that kind of extra feedback as well. And again, I mentioned you can use images. So it could be a simple quiz or test where you can say thumbs up or thumbs down. So you're using images again to help the student answer the questions as well. So a lot of different ways in which you can use those. Some organizations also use Google Forms for assessments. So there's a lot of questions, very specific questions. So very, very specific example from one of the school boards, learning with technology. How do you use technology? What do you use it for? What do you have access to? Especially now during COVID, we have dealt with learners who may not have the technology, and we need to know where they're at. So you could do assessments or questions that will help you with that process as well. Okay, now I'm going to ask you in the chat if you can provide any other ideas or suggestions. If you can think of forms to be used for something else. You may already have done it, so give us more ideas. The other two I can think of is that you can actually create lessons. So you could provide a bit of text, you could provide a video, and then questions below. You can do a scavenger hunt using your Google Forms. But what else? So let's take a minute or two to use the chat and see if there are any other suggestions from you. Okay, all right. Okay, so Quill, Heather, perfect. Thank you for that feedback on Quill's work on the task-based activities that will be as Google Forms. That's fantastic. Learning activities, so Liz, that's fantastic as well. Oh, orders or direct selling, perfect. Why not? You could have that as an example for your students if they're learning about something like that. Satisfaction surveys, self-reflection. Oh, I love this one. Those are really, really good. Fundraising from Christine, that's fantastic as well. So I'm glad to see your ideas coming in. Those are perfect, 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 perfect. Journals. Oh, I love that as a journal. Oh, you guys are going to have lots of great conversations today about Google Forms. This is amazing. I'm just very, very quickly go back to a question from Gabi. Can I make fillable forms in Google Forms? In a way, yes, that's the idea. So you may not be able to create the look of the form you have exactly the way it would look on your PDF, if you can think that way. But if you have a question where somebody asks, what's your age, just as an example, and there's a field, that's how you can recreate some of the questions that you may have on a different document. So yes, in a way, you can recreate a lot of existing documents to have the feel and look in the Google form as well. Okay, we are going to go through an example to show everybody as well. Okay, so this is perfect. Here's my Google form. What I'm going to do, I'm going to post this form for you in the chat. So you'll be able to answer the questions and also get a sense of a very basic Google form. As I said, I suspect that many of you already have been using Google Forms and have seen how they work. But just in case, I'm going to ask you to fill out this form. So I put it in the chat, answer the questions there. On my end, I'm going to show you how I see the results when they're coming in as well. So you're going to be looking at the form from client view. I'm going to be looking at the form from the recipient or somebody who sees the answers. So take a few seconds and let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to go to my form as well, open it. All right, so this is what you should be able to see on your screen. So that's your view. I'm going to go back into the editing mode and go and see this from the back end. So that's what we will be learning about today as well. Okay. So as you're filling this out, I'm just going to very briefly show you, if you have a chance to look at the screen, that my responses tab, which is the second one, there's a number in there and it's increasing. That's what's telling me that you are finding the link, you're accessing it, and answering the questions in the form. So nothing happens on this end because I'm still looking at the questions. But if I jump to the second tab that says responses, that's what I'm going to see all of these responses coming in. So I'm just going to briefly jump into some of the answers you're providing, because in responses, I can look at them from summary, question, or individual view. So I'm going to hold on for a few more minutes to give you a chance to finish filling it out, and we will discuss it in more detail. Okay, so I'm just watching the numbers. If the number will stop growing, that will mean that that you're finished, but I can see that there's still a few of them coming in. Our group is fairly big, so I just want to make sure that you do have a chance to fill it out if you want to. And if you're watching my screen, you can see some of the responses kind of jumping in and changing as the answers are coming in as well. Okay, perfect. So just a few more minutes to let you finish. We only have 3 questions, so not too many. Okay, so we stopped at 40. I'm going to just very quickly start talking about the summary. So I scrolled through the first section because in the first question, I asked for the name, and we don't need to share that on the screen. But the second and third questions are a bit interesting. How familiar are you with creating Google Forms? So just through a visual graph as a summary, I can see that 21 of you said you're just starting. You're beginning with Google Forms. So this may be a good introduction for you. Some of you said 2, some of you said 3, some of you said 4, and if you are very comfortable with Google Forms, you're actually at 5. So that's perfect. Please chime in with other comments and feedback here. We always welcome everybody's additional comments and lessons and tips as well. So that tells me, if I wanted to use or discuss this in a bit more detail with you, that I need to go slow, that I need to cover a lot in our Google Forms. And because we have an hour and a half today, You may not get everything at the first time, and that's okay. We are just starting. I hope at least at the end of this session, you will know you can create forms and surveys, how you can use them, and then where do you go to get a bit more help and information. And the number one thing for me to remember is understanding that if you are in Google Forms editing mode, you will see extra tools in the top right corner, including a send button to tell you I'm in this editing mode. This is my view as somebody who creates a survey. On your end, when you're looking at my form, you do not see those buttons. That's the view your learners will have, somebody else will have that is filling out the survey. If you can differentiate between those two, that's number one thing, because then you don't get too confused as to what's what, okay? All right. Okay, question from Heather, can you embed a Google form into a learning management system? Yes. So in the send section, if I'm just going to very quickly jump there to answer, there is an option to send through email, link, or embed code. So you can take this embed code header and put that into any website or learning management system. So that will allow you to display this form. The only worry I will have is that sometimes, depending on the learning management system, they may have different setups or permissions. But basically, there is embed code that allows you to embed it into something else, okay? Some forms show results as a pie graph. Is that because there are fewer options for answers, fewer participants? That's a very good question, Maura, and I'm not 100% sure. I noticed that sometimes it's a bar graph, sometimes it's a circle. I think it depends on the type of question. So if you, I noticed that if I have a level 1 to 5, it will be a bar chart. But if it's yes, no types of questions, then it could be usually a pie chart. So maybe the type of question that sort of directs how the system represents it in the summary. But just to really go back very quickly to summary, there's also an option to do individual answers. So you can, again, I'm just going to quickly jump through the first name or try to block it. But you will be able to see everybody's answers one by one, or you can see the questions by question as well. So a lot of different options for you from this end. But going back to the questions tab, that's where I built the entire survey. That's how I did that. So all this information you have access to when you yourself go to forms. So this is our next step. I'm going to take you through the process of going to Google Forms, setting up a very brief survey so you can see how I create the questions, sending the survey to others, and so on. So we have a bit of time to do that. So I hope that will give you some good overview of how it works. Okay. All right. Now I can see there are other questions coming in. So before I start the form, I'm just going to answer those questions so you have them right away. First question, is collect emails a feature to collect the email addresses of people responding? Yes. And because this is not a question, so when you check this off, that option, so let me see if I remember where that is coming in. This is the question that Julie is asking about. If I check this off, is it going to collect the email addresses? Yes, but that basically means it will want the person filling out the survey to be logged in. So the system behind the scenes collects this email address. If you want somebody to give you the email address, rather than checking this off, create a question, what's your email address? So this will actually make somebody have to sign in into the Google so the system can pull their email address. So if you don't want them to be signed in, do not use that feature, okay? The second one, is there a way to bold, italize, or underline font on Google Form? Not really. The system gives you the look, and that's what you have to work with, okay? The next one is, can you edit a question format once it's been created? Yes. So that's a very quick question to answer. Just to show you, if I go into the question in the question section, as soon as I click on it, it takes me to the question, and then I can add another word, delete, adjust as I need to. So you can change those questions after you created them. Now, there could be a situation where you send out the survey or quiz or test, and people already started responding, and you want to go in and change the question. The system may give you a warning to say, if you change this question, it may not match because you already have responses and so on. So then you have to decide if this is really what I need to do, okay? but you could edit questions after you created them. Okay, all right. Okay, so April recently completed a form and the creator was changing it at the same time. I was completing it. My answers weren't saved, just FYI. So that is going back to that question, can I change the question? So if you shared it and people are already responding, then that becomes an issue because you maybe overlap at the same time you're doing changes on both ends. So as a tip for this one, if you're worried about this, there is another thing you can do. If I go to responses, the system says accepting responses and it's enabled. You may want to disable that as you're adjusting the questions and then enable it again. That way you're not running into a problem where you are in the system and somebody filling out the question is in the system and there's no save because you overwrote each other. So that accepting responses button may be helpful in that situation. Okay, can you change the format, not the question? Yes. So if I go in here again one more time to the questions, go back to the last question here on the right side. This was right now a short answer, but I can change it to paragraph, multiple choice, and so on. So you can change those formats as well. You're not restricted by that. Another tip, very quickly, you can also move them around. By clicking on the tiny, tiny 6 dots, I can move it and reorder them as much as I want to. So there's a lot of options for you when you're working with that. Lots of good questions. Let's create one. So that way we know where we are going with this, okay? So I'm going to do it live. On your slides, you do have those steps as well. So my hope really is that we are doing it, you're learning from me on the screen, but also you have the slides to go back and review that afterwards, whichever is easier for you and makes a difference, okay? Okay, I'm going to keep the questions that are coming in. I'm going to come back to them in a few minutes, but keep them coming. So in the meantime, I'm going to show you 2 ways to get to Google Forms. My preferred way, especially when you're just starting to use your Google products, is the actual address bar. Just type in forms.google.com and hit enter. If you're signed in, the system will take you into your Forms panel. If you're not signed in, the system will say sign in into your account and then it will do that for you. So that's the main and fast way to access your forms. Another one is you may be used to using the apps, Google Apps button. I call it waffle menu. If you click on that, you may be able to go through the list of apps and one of them will be here. If I click on that, it's going to do the same thing, takes me to the same page. It actually will take me to basically a landing page where I have a few options before I even create a form. One, I see all kinds of templates. So you don't have to build the form from scratch if you don't want to. They are assessments that already are preset by Google, very basic ones. So you can start working with that. Worksheets, event feedback, blank quiz, all kinds of things. And if you click on the template gallery, there'll be more. So you can try that. My preferred method, especially if I start from beginning, is just to click on the plus symbol. That will start a blank Google form. But if you created forms before, it will also tell you those are the forms you have worked in the past, so that if I want to reopen it or make a copy of it, I have them handy in the same system, so I can access them directly from here. I'm going to click on the plus symbol, and it's going to take me to my Google form right away. So let's talk about this just for 1 second. If you remember the form I gave you earlier, I was asking you to go and answer the questions, and then I saw the responses. And that layout on my end, as somebody who is creating the form, will always be the same. So I always point 3 things. On the left is actually how you can save this form, so you can find it later. In the middle is where you're building your questions. And on the right side is you customizing the questions and sending it. So 3 sections to kind of look at. The first one on the left, very simple. I can just call it Monika Google Apps session. And if I just click away from it anywhere else on the screen, you will notice the system now took it and also create a tiny folder icon. That folder is basically going to tell me where did it save it and it's telling me I saved it in my drive for you because that you didn't tell me where to save it. So I'm just going to put it in my drive. If you ever need to find it, it's going to be there, okay? Now, if I wanted to move it to a different folder, I can just navigate and find the folder I want to move it to, or I can create a new folder and place my form in there. So lesson number 1, naming the file is very important. Start with that always, because then you can find your form. There's the worst thing if you go to your Google Drive and you have 20 untitled forms. You don't know which one is which. So your naming is important. And also that immediately tells you that you can select where it's going to be saved, and it is going to be saved in your Google Drive. Even if you don't tell the folder, it will just go to my drive and it will be saved there for you automatically, okay? So that's number 1, okay? There's no save button. The system tells you all changes saved automatically in there. So now, as I name my form, the title here is the same. It could actually be different. It could be slightly different from the file name. This is the file name that I'm keeping. This is the title that will be visible to whoever filled out the questions or survey. So this could be, how is your day? Right? It could be just like that. They don't have to be the same. Now I have the title. Below, I can add additional tips, additional comments, whatever you want. So it could be just a simple, let's reflect. Okay? And now I have my heading for my form. All right? Questions are coming in next. So now the system is telling me I have the first question for you preset that you can customize. So I can go in here and just ask a few questions. What day is today? Just to show you that I can have a few. Today. Okay. There are different formats I can do. I can say, give me a date, and the system will keep it as a date. Or I can say, well, no, I can just make it a short paragraph so they will have to type it in. I could also make it multiple choice. So I can list all the days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. And then, TUE, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, one more, Sunday, and then they just will select. So I'm working on this question. When I'm in this question, next to it is a blue bar. That just tells me you have this question open, you're working on it. If you have multiple questions underneath each other, it just helps you to locate which question you're editing. So I can put the question in here, give everybody the options for answers. I can always come back and fix this. Notice as I'm moving my mouse on the right, I have an option to add pictures. So I could represent the answers with pictures if I want to. Even the main question could have a picture. So you can customize it to be a bit more visual. At the bottom, I have 2 options. I can replicate or duplicate this question. I can delete this question, and I can make this question required. What that means is that if somebody doesn't answer the question, they will not be able to move on. The system will stop them. I'm going to make it required, and I'm ready. Now, I have 2 ways to add additional question. I can either duplicate this one and adjust it, or I can look to the tools on the right and say, add another question. And notice what the system did. The blue bar moved to the second question because that's the one I'm editing. And again, I can create the question from scratch, or replicate, duplicate, and copy as much as I want. So a lot of different options for you to create the questions. So this is my what day is today? How is it going? Not the best questions for you, but I'm sure you will get the idea what I mean. And in this one, I'm actually going to say short paragraph. Some of you may actually have the option for your students when they come to meet with you during the week to start with asking them, how is your day? But give them the option to reflect on their own as a writing activity, self-reflection, or so on. So that could be actually a good example of how you build the questions. And again, I go in, customize the question, either duplicate or another question, and I move on. So that's how you build your questions right in the middle. Okay, I'm going to pause and go quickly check some of your questions. All right, so if someone else created the form, can I change the format of the questions if they give me access? Yes, April. So if they make you a co-editors, you will have access to the same form and you will be able to make the changes as much as you want. Can this feature be used with a personal account? That's right, Gabby. Yes, it is available to you with personal account. Same access, forms.google.com. Karen, do you know how much can you type in short answers and how much in paragraph? Very good question. I never tried, to be honest with you. I always think of the short answers as 2-3 lines of text. If it's a bit longer, then I will give it a bit, make it a longer paragraph. And then usually what it is that when somebody, when you select it, so for example, in short answer, it will look very short. If I make it a paragraph, it usually allocates a lot more space when you actually view it from the client view. They will see a bigger box to write in. So, but in terms of characters, I don't know. But a good question. Can you add an image so we can see where it goes? Perfect. So in how is it going? I can add an image in here. So this will go with the actual question. And in here, I'm going to see and use Google image search, sunny day. Let's see if anything comes up. So I'm just going to pick one of those and insert it. I click on it, click insert, and the system is going to add it with the question. So the question is above, then image, and then the answer below. Another option for me to add an image is here on the right. This will add an image separately from the question. So if I click on this one and do the same thing, I'm going to say sunny day so you can see. One more time, same picture, insert. Oh, there was a problem because I potentially used this one, so it's not going to let me. Let me try another one. This one. Insert. Oh, of course, when I'm trying to show you, it doesn't want to let me. Ha! So it's one of those things. So the idea is that you can insert images in 2 ways, directly in the question or as an add-on. And it may be just because I already inserted one that the system doesn't want to let me insert the other one. But the idea is you could add images. If I wanted to add images here next to the answers and click on the right, again, I'm just going to quickly jump to find an image in Google search, Monday. What is going to come up on Monday? Well, it could be just the text. Here we go, Monday. So then it's going to, oh, look at that. My system is giving me a hard time today. You can add images, I promise you. One more. I'll try just one more time. Here. So that's how the system can add them in. So if you wanted to preview, I have 2 questions and I have the title. I want to see what this will look like for somebody outside who is not editing this form. In the top right corner here, there's an eye, and that allows me to preview this form. So I'm going to click preview. And this is what this is going to look like. What day is today? In this one, we had the image. That's why the system is looking for images for the other ones. If there was no image, it will be just a list. But because we added image, it's showing it to me there. And the second one has the picture and the question below. So that's how somebody else can see the survey when they are filling it out as a client, as a learner, as a colleague that you're asking to do the form for you. So your preview is very handy. There's two ways for me to go back. I usually just go back using the previous tab. Click on the tab, and then I'm back in my editing mode. So if I remove this image and go back to preview one more time, just to show you, now it's just a list. So you decide how you want to lay it out, okay? All right. Wonder if you can add just an image and then multiple questions below that. Yeah, so usually, just to clarify that, if I go back to my editing mode, if I don't have a question selected and I go here, that's where I can have one image, and it's usually separate. It kind of sits there separately. I'm just trying to see if it will do that for me. See, it just puts that image separately, and then you can have multiple questions below if you want to. So you have 3 different ways in which you can add images to your form. The 4th way, this is just to add extra things to it, is if you customize the form. So you may want to have a form where there's a header, and that header could be an image. So when I preview this one, just to show you, I have a purple line, title, a bit of description, and the questions, right? So this is how that image got added without anything below it. But if I come back to my editing tab, I can go to this palette on the right side. I have a palette. I can click on it and I can choose an image. That image will become a header for my form. So even if I don't have any other images, just the header, you can nicely illustrate your form. Remember this image? I used it when I was asking you questions today. This is how I added it. I just came here to the palette, theme options, added the image, found it right in there and added it. The system has colors, so I can take the colors. They usually are dictated by that image I added, but I could also come in and say, no, I literally want red or pink or any other color, and the system will still take it and change the theme colors for you as well. So if you want to brand it around your colors for the organization, you have all that control in here as well. You were asking about fonts. This is what you can choose when it comes to fonts. So there isn't much for you to choose in terms of bolding, italics, and things like that. You can just change the type of font if you want to. But I usually stick to the basic one because like those will be very hard to read. So I would never use that unless it was a very specific purpose. Okay, so I hope the theme helps, and we are very, very close to having this really, really not nice, but not finished form sent to somebody so you can take a look at what it will look like. Okay, I'm just going to stop for one more second and see other questions from you. How do you get set up so you get email notification that someone has filled out the form? We'll cover that. Wonder if you can add just an image and then a multiple questions about that. Yes, I hope that's showing you that you could add an image and the questions and you can move them around, makes a difference. You can use Canva to create your own headers using your logo. They have some amazing header templates. Fantastic, Liz. Very good tip. Just look up the dimensions that you will use for this header. Occasionally it gets resized just because depending on what format you're using, phone, tablet, or your computer. So just look up online the dimensions. I just don't remember them right now. And then make sure that your image is the right size, okay? Okay, so yes, Karen, as you're saying, you were trying to add the image, your logo to the form and it gets resized or stretched because this is a specific size. So you want to know what kind of dimensions you need for your form. If you just Google search, Google form, image, or header dimensions, the system will tell you and still kind of allocate some space for that just in case if the system resizes that. Oh, Liz, there you go. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so let me go back, change this font to something a bit more readable, basic. We are good. I can close this. So now I have all those things. If I go to responses, you were asking me, how do I get notifications before I even send it? In responses, you have a few options. When they're coming in, you will see them here. You can also tell the system to automatically create a spreadsheet, and anytime somebody answers, those answers will also go into a spreadsheet for you. So you can work with a spreadsheet if that's easier. So I'm going to say, sure, create that. And it's just going to be ready for me when I need it. It's going to be empty now, but it will be there. And all the answers coming in will be showing up. It's going to be a live spreadsheet. The more answers coming in, the more it will be updating. Tomorrow, next week, if there's somebody answering, this document will be updating as it goes, okay? So you will have that. And next to it, you have 3 dots. Those 3 dots have extra options for you. Get email notifications for new responses. So you check that off, and anytime somebody fills out the form, you get an email to tell you this form has been answered or filled out. And that's very helpful, I can tell you that. There's a few extra things. You can select response destination. That's just basically telling you if you want to send it to another spreadsheet, so you can ignore that. You can unlink the form, and then you can download responses as well. Because I don't have anything yet, I can't print it. But if I would, I will be able to print the responses from here as well. So lots of great sections here. Building questions, seeing how responses come in. On the right, you have the palette, you have the preview eye, and then you have settings. The settings are to help you. Number one, take a note, please. Take a piece of paper, take a pen, write this down. If you are using organizational Google products, Alpha Plus is using Google Workspace, and automatically our system keeps this restricted to Alpha Plus only. If I don't uncheck it, and send you a link to this form, the system will not let you fill it out because it's restricted to Alpha Plus. So for me, I always have to have this mental note before I send it, go and check the settings. So for me, I will have to have this unchecked. So then anyone who answers or who gets the link will be able to see it. And I have a few extra options here. Edit responses after they submit. So that's the option where the learner or whoever fills out the form can actually answer the question and then can go back and edit it because they remember they answered it wrong. They actually thought something else. At the end, after they hit submit, there will be a link, and that link will tell them go back and edit it if you want to. So you can enable or disable it. And also you can show somebody the charts and results, or you don't have to. Usually you don't, but if it's an activity for your students, it's like a quiz or something, you may want to show them some kind of responses. So you have an option to do that. Now, notice there are other two tabs in here under settings. Number 2 is presentation tab. In this one, I can show extra information. So I can show a progress bar. If my survey is long, I may want to do that. You can shuffle question order. This is if you were doing a quiz and checking with your students if they know something so that they don't memorize the answers, right? So you could actually shuffle the questions and show link to submit another response. I know it's a kind of strange one to think about, but what it is if you were in a computer lab and the same students were using the same computer to answer the survey, this link will show up at the end. So the student can just click on it and then fill out the survey, hit submit. Another student comes up, clicks on that link, fills out the survey, and so on. That's why it's there. You can disable it if you don't want it, but it's there. And finally, you can do confirmation message. So that's where you can adjust what kind of message is displayed after somebody hits submit. So it could be, thank you for filling out our survey. Please visit our website, and you can put a link to our website. Thank you for those answers. If you want more practice, watch this video. You can put the link to the video. So you can customize that confirmation message as much as you want. Finally, the third one is quizzes. So right now my form is not a quiz, but if I wanted to make it a quiz, I could just by shuffling it this way. I can just enable it and checking the permissions. Then I go back to my questions and assign values. So I can say if the question was, what's today? And today is Tuesday. I can say Tuesday is the right answer, give 1 point because they answered it correctly. So you could create it as a quiz that will mark the responses and assign point values. So this is where you can customize that as well. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that. If you want to practice the quiz, I really suggest you just try it. Create one form, go and create that. We have some tips in the slides on how to do that as well. I just want to show you how to send it. I'll send you the link to it so you will be able to see it. And then we are going to move on into a bit of a breakout room so you can have a bit of more conversation around those Google Forms, where you're at and how you can share with each other some of the work that you're doing. Okay, so bear with me for one more second. The last two things is the sending. And I know some of you have been asking about add-ons. So if you are new to Google Forms, add-ons is just world of extra things you can add to your form to make it work better. It could be to allow you to automate how things happen. It could be to display content in a different way. Many, many different ways in which you can use add-ons. Not everybody is using them. You don't have to use them in any way, but this is where you can find them and add them. So in our slides, I mentioned one of the add-ons that we have been using in the past. So if somebody is interested, refer to that as well. And then I'm going to jump to sending. So if I click send, this is where you finished your form, it's ready to go, you want to send it out. So I have a few options. I can automatically collect respondents Alpha Plus Center email if this was going to Alpha Plus. So think of it as if it's an organizational, some organizations issue email addresses to their learners. And in that setting, this may work. But if you don't do that, if you don't have that type of account, if you're using regular Gmail account, never check off any of the collect emails because that creates restrictions. Just don't even go there. Send via is your friend. So you can send it by email. And right now it's underlined. What this basically means is I can put somebody's email address. So I just, whatever email you want to, I can add the subject line. I can even add the message or instructions. If somebody is using Gmail and I include form in the email, sometimes this is enabled, sometimes it's not, depends on the question, then the form will actually display within their email. They don't even have to click on a link or open anything. It will be part of their email. It very likely is not going to show for me because I inserted images, and sometimes the system will not allow that to display directly in the email. But if it was just questions and it was a short one, it will display in the email so somebody can answer directly within the body of the email. So this is how I can do it. I can fill this out and I'm going to hit send. Monika@marston.ca is going to receive this email with the form, click on open, answer the questions, and she's done. Great for you if you're doing it for one person. But if you're sending it to 10, 15, 20 people, and you want to keep track who you send it to, because this is part of Google Form, it's really hard to see. So let's say you sent it to 3 people, you got interrupted, walked away, you did something and you're back, and now you don't remember. Did I send it to Monika, or was in the process of doing it? What happened? Better way, and the way that I always suggest, is you use the link. This is the second option in here. You can get a link to your form. The system will give you a long link, but you can make it a bit shorter. You copy this link, go to your email, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, whatever tool you use to send emails, write the email, put the link in there and send it out. Because then your email tool, Gmail, Outlook, has history of who you sent it to, and then you're corresponding with that person. So it's going to be a bit easier for you to keep track who you corresponded with, who you sent it to, and then see the results right away. So this is just a tip. The same link could be put in the chat. So if I shorten the link, copy it, I can put this in the chat for all of you. And please bear in mind, I didn't really make it very nice. It was just a test. But you can see you should be able to open the form and answer the questions. So if I'm in the session with you and I want to give you the link at the end, I just put the link in the chat and you can answer the questions. That's how simple it is. And as Heather was asking, can we embed? That's the third option. You can embed the actual form into Pages or learning management system websites. You get the code for that as well. Okay, so we covered the sending. Hopefully you are able to see the link. If I send it to you properly, here is the link. So you can see that you can access it. All that is just by working within this forms.google.com and opening the form and playing with that. So if you have fun with it, try playing and navigating and using Google Forms that way. I'm going to go back to your questions just one more time, and then I'm going to give you a bit of time so that you can actually go into the breakout room and have a bit of chat about that, okay?
Sorry, Monika, the form you just sent, we need permission for it. Sorry.
Not sure, I just heard somebody and I'm not sure if it was a question or if it was just somebody accidentally unmuting themselves.
No, sorry, Monika, that was me. I was just saying that the form you just sent, it says that we need permission.
You need permission, okay?
Yes.
So let me check one more time why you can't open it. So I created the form. If I go to my settings, did I remove the restrict? See, remember I was supposed to do restrict, but I didn't. So I'm going to remove it and save. And please refresh the page with the link I sent you. Now it should work. So see, I make those mistakes sometimes as well. It's just one of those things you have to remember to do to remove that restriction. So can you check one more time if you're able to open the form now? All right, see, now I can see somebody is going in, so now it's working. So if you get a message from your learner, from somebody else saying, it's asking me to sign in, you forgot to uncheck something in your settings. So remember that. Okay, so a few extra questions from you. So somebody was asking what email address will be used. The system will use yes. So if you send the form directly from the send and mail option, it will use your Google account email. If you take the link, then you can send it from any email. You can go to your work Outlook, personal email, whatever you use. The link can be used with any email. But if you are sending it directly from Google Forms in that mail option, the owner of the account, which is your Google Drive, that's the email the system will send from. Can you print certain responses? Karena, if you go to individual responses, you can print each of those individually. Yes. Okay. And then we have learned if you make a form with a short answers, it can be hard to predict answers. Note at the top that your instructor tutor will review your responses and update your grade, or use the paragraph question, which requires manual grading. Awesome tips. This is fantastic. Another person, do you need to be logged into Google account for others to fill in your forms? No, 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 no. So anyone can fill out the form as long as they have the form open by clicking on a link or clicking within the email that they use. So if they receive the link to the form through Yahoo, they don't have to be in Google. They can answer the questions anyway. Can you set up your quiz with a text or speech add-on? Never tried. Usually the speech and an add-on is something that is on the receiver's end in the browser. So if the learner will have that enabled, then they basically can hear or read or have something read out to them. But on your end, there isn't much option where you can do that. Can this also work through Hotmail accounts too? If you send a link to somebody that has Hotmail, they'll be able to open it and fill it out. So yes, if that's the question. And also you can send the link through the Hotmail. So if you are using Hotmail, go open the email, put the link in there and send it out that way. I sent a form to someone. It was created by someone else and shared with me. And when the recipient sent it back, I never got it. What would have happened there? So if the form belonged to somebody else, it's very possible that the person who created the form got the notification rather than you, because you are the sort of secondary potentially to the owner of the form. So that could have happened here. Okay, so now I can see you're saying you got permissions. Now it's working. Okay, and then recording. So we are going to save this chat. So I know some of you are asking for recordings. I know Ambrini is recording, so she will be sharing the recording. If there are any specific email addresses, we will try to make sure that we catch them through the chat and then we can send it to you. So it's 3:42. I also want to mention Google Sheets just for a bit. So I want to make sure you have access to that, or at least we talk about that a bit. I want to make sure that we get to that. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do breakouts. So I'm going to stop share. Okay, bear with me for the setup because we need to enable that for you. And if you remember, we did breakout rooms last time. And so what really happened is that we opened the breakout rooms and then there were 4 or 5 breakout rooms that you could go to. So you can join in and chat with each other. It sometimes depends which breakout room you choose. And there may be a few people, there may be more people. It's a bit hard for us to control when we are setting this up. So hopefully you will have a nice group to connect with and chat as well. So what I'm going to do is we have 56 participants here. So I'm going to create 10 rooms, 10 at 5, no, maybe I'll create 8 rooms so that you'll have a bit bigger number in each room. I'm going to make it an option where you can choose the room. So as soon as I enable the breakout rooms, you'll be able to go and choose a room to go into. Now, if you're using a phone, a tablet, or if you need our interpreters, stay in here. Do not go into a breakout room. Just don't click that option at all. So we will be here and we'll have around 5 minutes to quickly chat about Google Forms and what works. You have been amazing today with the chat tips and suggestions you have. So I'm really, really grateful for that and appreciate that and really hope that in the breakout room, you will have a chance to connect and do a bit more. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes and open all the rooms. So feel free to click on the breakout rooms and go in. I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then I'm going to close the breakout rooms. When I close the breakout rooms, you will have around 60 seconds before the system kicks you back into our room. So you don't have to jump back right away. You just wait for the system to bring you back to our main session. So I can see some of you are already going in. Reminder, click on the breakout rooms, pick a number, go into it, and just chat and connect with others. So you can practice, you can learn what others are doing. If they're using Google Forms, maybe they have extra tips for you that we didn't cover yet in the session, okay? And everybody else who is staying behind, we can talk here about this. So if there are any volunteers, we are going to give everybody else just maybe 2 more minutes to choose breakout rooms and go in. And hopefully that will allow everybody else to go in. So I can see there's some empty rooms still. Click breakout rooms, select a room, and join those breakout rooms. 2 more minutes before we start talking here, just so that everybody else can spread out a bit and have space to connect. Okay? All right. Perfect. So in this room, if you're staying in the main room with me, that's fantastic. What I would like to suggest is tell me more. Tell me how you are using Google Forms. So again, you can stay with me or jump to a breakout room. If you do not see the option for breakout rooms, it's very likely you're using Chromebook or tablet, and that may not be working for you the same way. So just stay here, stay with us. Any volunteers? I can call on someone, or do I have any volunteers who may want to speak up today?
I'm using a laptop, but I couldn't see the breakout room.
Okay.
Selection.
All right.
Where is it? Where would it be?
So if you look for the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom, if you don't see the toolbar where you have your microphone, speaker, and everything else, in that toolbar, you should see a button that says breakout rooms. And if you click on it, it will allow you to choose the room and to go and join in.
So the toolbar where it says participants, chat, share screen,
Yes.
record.
Do you see an option for breakout rooms?
No, there isn't.
Okay, so just stay with us. It sometimes just depends on the device. But if others see it, feel free to jump out and then use the breakout rooms that way, okay? But since we have you here, do you use Google Forms, and how do you use them?
I myself have used Google, not like for taking a course, so I didn't design it. I had to use them.
Mm-hmm. And was it easy? Was it hard? How was your experience with it?
My experience was very, very good. I just sort of found my way around it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for sharing. I have to tell you, one of the places I saw Google Forms being used is being at the garden show. And there were a few staff members walking around with a tablet, and they will just reach out and ask if we want to do a survey. And of course, as soon as we got the tablet, it was a Google form, asking for, their personal information, or just how is your day going? What did you like about the show? And it was just easy. Tap on the answers, hit submit, and it went. One thing we just want to highlight as well is that when you're creating your Google Forms, you could ask for somebody's name, but you don't have to. You could actually just make the form very anonymous. So it's more about what kind of information you're trying to gather. But if you are trying to know or want to know who filled out the survey, then you actually have to create a field asking for somebody's name. Otherwise, you just won't know because the system doesn't know who it was, right? But it can be a very, very handy tool for all kinds of different reasons. I know in our LBS field, we have the follow-up surveys that we need to do. What we noticed is that our students didn't know how to fill out surveys in the first place. They just have never done this before. So for some of your organizations, what worked very well was creating the surveys and using them during the actual sessions as the learners were in the program, whether online or in person, so they could be exposed to filling out surveys and understand what it actually means. Where do I click? Why do I have to hit submit, and so on? And after they did it once or twice, it could be about, how was your session today? Give me a bit of feedback. How was this month in the class? Can we improve on something? After they did that, they were much more comfortable with filling out other surveys, such as follow-up surveys. And it actually made a difference for the numbers for the program, because originally their surveys, the follow-up surveys, were very low. And all of a sudden, it actually worked because students understood how to work with surveys where they didn't know how to do that before. So we assume they know, but sometimes it's good to practice and make sure that they have a chance to do that, right?
Monika, if you're logged out of your Google account, can other users still fill out your form, or do you have to be logged in?
No. The system takes all this information whether you're signed in or out. Basically, it kind of works behind the scenes for you. So it's collecting responses. As long as that button that says collect responses is on, which is usually automatically on, it will be collecting whether you are signed in, signed out, your computer is on or off. Okay, very good question. Thanks. Other questions, other tips from other participants that are here with us in this room?
Oh, so It's me, Liz. I'm from Brant Skill Center. I'll turn my video on.
Okay.
So we've been using Google Classroom since like March, April of last year. And we actually have built classrooms in Google Classroom using forms and made them quizzes.
Okay.
It's obnoxious though, because if you sign them into the Google Classroom, sometimes the grades don't automatically report back unless you've restricted the access. So then you have to manually put it in. So it can be really difficult if we have a big group of people to track grades.
Yep.
If that's what you're doing. So that's a little bit finicky, like instead of like our other LMS. And again, but it's really good to do that. And it's really easy to build or even put in like other links really easily, and videos, like YouTube videos, you can embed into a form as well.
Exactly.
So like milestone A3.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything.
Yes, I totally get it. But thank you for the tip.
But like, yeah, you can embed the videos, and I find that's really helpful. And we actually have a Google Apps course that we run because so many people have had to adapt to use it. So so that's really good as well. But using those forms is like, you can use it for almost anything, but we don't use it for registration. I guess that's the only thing that we don't use it for.
And then I forgot to include it, but I'm going to go and update my slides later. I'm going to send you also an option for scavenger hunt. I mentioned that you could do it, but I didn't include any information. I have seen amazing scavenger hunts. So basically, like it's a form where you build a journey for the student. You ask them to do something, retrieve some information, fill it in, and when they do, they kind of unlock the next step. So it's amazing how you can use it as a multi-purpose tool for different reasons.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I'll include it in the slides and resend it to everyone to make sure that everybody gets access to that. Okay, I'm going to close all the breakout rooms because I just need everybody to come back so we can wrap up our session for today. But amazing feedback from so many of you, and I can see questions are still coming in and feedback is coming in. I'm going to hold off with Kathy, your question about security, until everybody comes back, if that's okay. And we use Google Forms for learner assessments and also for feedback from workshops. Results in Google Sheets. Yes, one thing about Google Sheets, so we didn't go that much into it, and I'm going to briefly jump into it before we finish today, but it's this idea that it's a live document that I absolutely love, because a lot of us are used to working with spreadsheets and adding information and doing different things, where in this spreadsheet, you can actually add notes for yourself on the side while the system is still feeding information from the forms that others are filling out. So the best example would be, let's say, if it was the follow-up survey that you want to report in your CAMS, you could put a note in a separate column that will say submitted or added to CAMS, and that spreadsheet will have that for you while the new feedback is still coming in. So you can be working with this spreadsheet in multiple ways, all in one place, which is amazing. Okay, so perfect. Now, is everybody back? Not yet. Let's see. Let's check if everybody had a chance to come back. Okay. How many participants do I have? I have 50, and I know sometimes the system kind of drops some of you as we are coming back and forth. So I'm going to stop the breakout rooms and start sharing my screen again, just so that we can finish our slides for today. I hope you enjoyed the breakout rooms and you learned a lot from each other. I know sometimes we also share tips in those, so that can be helpful as well. So very, very briefly for all of you, just if you had a chance to be in a breakout room and you came back, please let me know in the chat that you're back so that I don't miss anyone, because I know sometimes the system is just wonky. So I'm going to wait in the chat to see if you went to the breakout rooms, are you back? All right. Okay, perfect. So at least one person told me you're back. My system is not always as friendly with those things as I would like it to be. Okay, fantastic. Everybody's back. I hope you learned a lot from each other, at least share some tips and ideas. We had some really great tips here from all of you who stayed in the main room. A lot of things are still coming in the chat with the tips and resources. So notice how I did earlier today. I went over some of the things from the last session. I will want to make sure that I add some of your tips to our slides and also extra resources for you. So even though the slides already were shared with you, if you go back to the same link in a day or so, there will be a bit more information from me added so that you will have extra tips that we collected during the session today. So revisit those slides later on as well. Okay, I'm going to very briefly start and jump through the slides because we did a lot of that screen sharing together. So I apologize for just jumping through the slides that way. But I just want to make sure that we have all this information. And as I mentioned, all your Google Forms automatically get saved in Google Drive, so you don't have to worry about them. Extra tips for you in the slides. We don't have to cover all of them today, but those of you who are using Forms a lot and they want to do other things, a very good tip is the option to force a copy. So I'm going to share the screen with you and just show you. And make sure that you're looking at the right screen. So force a copy is one of those that you can access. So very, very quickly, can you see a screen that says force a copy? Force a copy. I just want to check. Anyone in the chat, just put me a very quick tip for me. Yes, fantastic.
Yes.
So I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but I just want to show you that if you go to your Google Form address, it will always have edit at the end. But if you go back and replace it with a copy, same link, just copy at the end, that will now force somebody else to automatically make a copy of your Google Form. So they are not now working with the original you gave them. They will get an option to automatically make a copy of it, save it in their Google Drive, and they can do with that form whatever they want. And it's as simple as changing that ending in the link to the form. So just so you know, it's a very, very handy tip to use. Add-ons, I mentioned you will get them. We did the breakout rooms. Google Sheets. I know I said we're going to do Google Sheets today, but really what I wanted to highlight is that Google Sheets really are almost like our regular Excel spreadsheets. So if you go to sheets.google.com, it will have a very similar look, a lot of different tools. You can create formulas, you can have pivot tables that you use in Excel. All that is very similar. But the main thing that I want to highlight is that any Google form you create in responses, when you click on that spreadsheet, it will create that Google form for you. And some of you mentioned how useful it is for you to have all those responses, not only going into the Google form as a summary or individual responses, but also to be represented for you in a spreadsheet format. And just as extra tip, if you are using spreadsheets for that, if you go to a column that is not assigned, so there's no question in there, nothing, you can add your own notes to it. Like, did I put that information in caps? Did I follow up with the student? Did I update their file? You can create notes like that for yourself in this spreadsheet, this live spreadsheet that is still collecting all those answers. So this is all very, very handy and useful for your sheets if you want to do a bit of work with that. So we are at 3:58, and of course, you're going to know what's next. And what's next is going to be a bit of homework for you. I really want you to practice. You have my email address. If you have time before now and the next session, go in, create a simple Google form, play with the options there, explore. If you get stuck in something that doesn't work, contact me or send the form to me, and I will be happy to see how it works and if you get stuck, where you got stuck. So use that time and my time as well to help you learn about Google Forms. So Google Slides and other cool apps will be our next session. And I said Jamboard will be one of the topics that we will also touch on in there. The slides and recording from this session will be shared with you afterwards. So as I mentioned, I will add a few extra things to the site. So not today potentially, but within a day or so, that will be updated. You will have the same link. Your link to the slides doesn't change. I'll just go and add a bit more information for you. Play with Google Forms, have fun with that. And of course, we need your feedback. So we really need to know, what did you think about our session today? Was this helpful? You had a lot of direct questions that I hope I really answered. And if I missed anything, I will be reviewing and making sure that we touch on them in the next session so they don't get missed. So here is the link to the survey, Google form, because that's how we do it as well. Same questions as last time. It's just sort of to give us this feedback on how we can improve and also what works for you. And with that, I'm going to stop and see if there is any other feedback from you or any additional questions, okay? All right, so Julie, I'm glad to see that you're motivated to try Google Forms. Please do, they could be so simple. You'll be surprised. Sometimes we actually use it at home to create a survey on who is going to bring what to a potluck party or even camping. So you never know how those could be used, all right? When you
Sorry,
did the
Monica,
Yeah.
the form says session 1. Is that correct?
It should say session 2, and I
Says session 1.
Okay, just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to check, and then you can watch me check. Why not? You're learning about Google Forms as well, and then so I'm going to stop presenting this. I am going to go to my forms, forms.google.com, just the same way I go to create the forms. I'm going to open it and TML. So this is the one. If you filled out this one, that's okay, but this is the one that I wanted to share. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to go to send, get the link for you, make it short, copy it, and it is the 7, copy it, and then place it in the chat for us as well. So again, you are looking at the right form. I think it's the same one, or maybe not. It may be slightly different link. In either way, I'll find your responses, even if you filled out the first one. But those will be helping us, and then we always value your feedback. So I apologize if there was a mix-up with the form. Okay? Okay, it is a new link. Pete, thank you. I appreciate and I apologize for that. When you did the Google image search, are you getting images that are not copyright protected? So Kathy, yes and no. So what I understand Google is doing is when it includes images, image searches within Google applications like Google Docs, Google Slides will have it, Google Forms, it is supposed to look for images that are copyright free. Basically, it will try to find that. So very often those will be coming from Pixabay and a few other platforms that provide free content. So technically, they're supposed to be allowed to use without having to quote the source, if that helps. But if you're not sure, use your own. All right? Okay, I'm going to take a few more minutes. I will be here. I know our interpreters will want to wrap up. So before we leave, do we have any questions from our participants who need interpretation?
Simone's saying no questions from me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Simone, for joining us today. All right. And then anybody else, just to check one more time? All right.
No, Kathy's saying thank you very much.
Oh, no problem.
That's
I'm
good.
glad that everybody was able to join. So Laura and Marianne, thank you so much for your patience today. I know I speak pretty fast and you have been amazing. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm going to let you go. Feel free to log out if you would like. If you want to stay, give me a bit more feedback, use the chat, stay and then comment. I'm here, but I just wanted to make sure that our interpreters can safely log off if they need to as well. Thank you so much again to both you, Laura and Marianne. Thank you.
Take care.
So Monica, I just wanted to ask
All right. So I'm here. Any
Yeah.
other questions, comments, feedback if I missed anything? Georgina and Nambreen, anything from you?
We're still here.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I'm just reviewing our chat to see if there are any other questions. No, I don't see any other questions. So
They're
that's
just
good.
signing off and thanking you for
Perfect.
the wonderful workshop.
Perfect. Thank you. I try my best.
You're great.
Perfect. And Kathy, I can still see you. Thank you for joining in today.
I've seen it so many times, but I every time I see it, I'm like, oh yes, that's right. I remember that. I should do that. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's
Great.
practice, right? The more you use
Yeah.
it, the more you learn about different things. And you know, as you just saw me with the restriction, I shared the link and then I thought I removed the restriction, but I didn't. So sometimes even double checking or just knowing if somebody tells you it's not working, just remembering, oh, I probably forgot to do this or that didn't save. And I just need to go back and enable it. So
And the
all
send,
those are help.
using the link instead with a shortcut Yeah, that's a great little tip.
Yeah, I love it that way. I mean, it took me a long time to figure out if I sent my Google form by email to 5 or 10 people, where do I see that? Like there is no history in that section. The only place you will see it is in that Excel spreadsheet. The Excel spreadsheet will actually have the name of the person, but there will be no responses. That's how you will know. You send it to people, but they didn't fill it out yet. But you have to know to do that. And you have to remember to do that. Nobody really does, right? So that's why I say link is your friend. It's your friend for everything. You can test it, make sure that it works, and then send it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate your time. Just checking how many more participants
we have
are
about
here
9 still online.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And if there are any other questions, let's just give you 1 more minute if you want to ask anything else. Otherwise, thank you so much for today. We are right before the long weekend, so enjoy your weekend and beautiful weather.
Thank you, Monika. Enjoyed the weekend as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, hi, Monika. It's Akila.
Hi, Akila. Thank you for your feedback as well. I appreciate it.
No problem. I have a question from last week's session.
Okay.
Not a question, actually. If you can repeat it 1 more time for me.
Totally.
You showed in Google Docs how to put footnotes from internet, like if I copy the article or something, then how to put the footnotes. I kind of forgot how to do that.
I know, it's a weird one. I always struggle with that, but let me just do this 1 more time because I still remember how I did it last time. So if I go to a Google document, open this document, so it's going to be blank new document. And first of all, I need to do the search, right? So I'm going to use the tools and I'm going to use the, where is that? Explore option. So if I go to explore, that allows me to search within the document, right? So I'm just going to say cats. I know I always use cats, but that's okay. Cats. And that will give me the option to search the web, search for images, or search in Google Drive. So if I click on here and look at the cats, I could go and open it, or I could just literally copy this information if I want to, and then just put it in here. By doing that, I'm still not citing it. But if I move my mouse over it, you get the quote marks. Right here on the right side. So if I click on that, that will add the citation at the bottom. So the quote marks over that tiny preview on the right.
Okay, perfect.
That's what adds it in. Okay?
Awesome. Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And 1 more question. When will we get the recording for the last session and this session? At the end, or?
That will be a question for Ambreen and Georgina. Ambreen and Georgina, are you able to help us with that question? Georgina, you're muted if you're speaking.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat it again?
When we'll be able to see the recording of the 2 sessions so far?
Okay, so I believe they are going to be posted on the website. So after the 3 sessions are done, they will be posted on the website.
Okay.
MTML's website.
So you're not posting them one after the session, you will post all of them together at the end.
Yeah, and Breen's not on the line. I think we're going to do the 3 after the sessions.
Okay, no problem. As long as we can access it, that'll be great.
It will be on the website.
Yeah. Perfect. So I suspect it's going to be put on YouTube. So you have the YouTube player and then add it to the website.
Okay, cool.
Just to make it easier.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.
Is that
so we are going to log off.
How many do we have left here? Is it just?
We have January, Magda, and Audrey. And I'm just really going to quickly check 1 more time if there's any comment from January, Magda, or Audrey. If not, I'm going to assume that the computers are still on and then everybody else is busy or doing something else, which is totally okay. So we can shut down the session. We can stop.
Oh, just 1 question.
Oh, January, go ahead.
I was waiting.
Oh, sorry.
For Google Docs, where do you save? I missed it because I had a little interruption.
No, January. So in Google Docs, basically it's saving automatically in your Google Drive. So there's no save button at all.
There's none.
Anything you do, anytime you open a new Google document, spreadsheet, slides, it will automatically be saving all that in your Google Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day and the long weekend.
You too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgina.
We'll just close it for everybody?
Yes, you can leave. You can end the session.
Perfect.